So Joseph took 5 of his brothers and went to the king. He told him, "My father and my brothers have come from Canaan with their flocks, their herds, and all that they own. They are now in the region of Goshen." He then presented his brothers to the king. The king asked them, "What is your occupation?" "We are shepherds, sir, just as our ancestors were," they answered. "We have come to live in this country, because in the land of Canaan the famine is so severe that there is no pasture for our flocks. Please give us permission to live in the region of Goshen." The king said to Joseph, "Now that your father and your brothers have arrived, the land of Egypt is theirs. Let them settle in the region of Goshen, the best part of the land. And if there are any capable men among them, put them in charge of my own livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to the king. Jacob gave the king his blessing, and the king asked him, "How old are you?" Jacob answered, "My life of wandering has lasted 130 years. Those years have been few and difficult, unlike the long years of my ancestors in their wanderings." Jacob gave the king a farewell blessing and left. Then Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt, giving them the property in the best land near the city of Ramesses, as the king had commanded. Joseph provided food for his father, his brothers, and all the rest of his father's family, including the very youngest. The famine. The famine was so severe that there was no food anywhere, and the people of Egypt and Canaan became weak with hunger. As they bought grain, Joseph collected all the money and took it to the palace. When all the money in Egypt and Canaan was spent, the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Don't let us die. Do something. Our money is all gone." Joseph answered, "Bring your livestock. I will give you food in exchange for it if your money is all gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. That year he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. The following year they came to him and said, "We will not hide the fact from you, sir, that our money is all gone, and our livestock belongs to you. There is nothing left to give you except our bodies and our lands. Don't let us die. Do something. Don't let our fields be deserted. Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We will be the king's slaves, and he will own our land. Give us grain to keep us alive and seed so that we can plant our fields." Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for the king. Every Egyptian was forced to sell his land because the famine was so severe, and all the land became the king's property. Joseph made slaves of the people from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land he did not buy was the land that belonged to the priests. They did not have to sell their lands because the king gave them an allowance to live on. Joseph said to the people, "You see, I have now bought you and your lands for the king. Here is seed for you to sow in your fields. At the time of harvest, you must give 1/5 to the king. You can use the rest for seed and for food for yourselves and your families." They answered, "You have saved our lives. You have been good to us, sir, and we will be the king's slaves." So Joseph made it a law for the land of Egypt that 1/5 of the harvest should belong to the king. This law still remains in force today. Only the lands of the priests did not become the king's property. Jacob's last request. The Israelites lived in Egypt in the region of Goshen, where they became rich and had many children. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, until he was 147 years old. When the time drew near for him to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, "Place your hand between my thighs and make a solemn vow that you will not bury me in Egypt. I want to be buried where my fathers are. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried." Joseph answered, "I will do as you say." Jacob said, "Make a vow that you will." Joseph made the vow, and Jacob gave thanks there on his bed. Some time later, Joseph was told that his father was ill. So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and went to see Jacob. When Jacob was told that his son Joseph had come to see him, he gathered his strength and sat up in bed. Jacob said to Joseph, Almighty God appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He said to me, I will give you many children, so that your descendants will become many nations. I will give this land to your descendants as their possession forever. Jacob continued, Joseph, your 2 sons, who were born to you in Egypt before I came here, belong to me. Ephraim and Manasseh are just as much my sons as Reuben and Simeon. If you have any more sons, they will not be considered mine. The inheritance they get will come through Ephraim and Manasseh. I am doing this because of your mother Rachel. To my great sorrow, she died in the land of Canaan, not far from Ephrath. As I was returning from Mesopotamia, I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath. Ephrath is now known as Bethlehem. When Jacob saw Joseph's sons, he asked, Who are these boys? Joseph answered, These are my sons, whom God has given me here in Egypt. Jacob said, Bring them to me, so that I may bless them. Jacob's eyesight was failing because of his age, and he could not see very well. Joseph brought the boys to him, and he hugged them and kissed them. Jacob said to Joseph, I never expected to see you again, and now God has even let me see your children. Then Joseph took them from Jacob's lap and bowed down before him with his face to the ground. Joseph put Ephraim at Jacob's left and Manasseh at his right, but Jacob crossed his hands and put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, even though he was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, who was the older. Then he blessed Joseph. May God, whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac served, bless these boys. May God, who has led me to this very day, bless them. May the angel who has rescued me from all harm bless them. May my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac live on through these boys. May they have many children, many descendants. Joseph was upset when he saw that his father had put his right hand on Ephraim's head. So he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to the head of Manasseh. He said to his father, Not that way, father. This is the older boy. Put your right hand on his head. His father refused, saying, I know, son, I know. Manasseh's descendants will also become a great people. But his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become great nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, The Israelites will use your names when they pronounce blessings. They will say, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. In this way Jacob put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Jacob said to Joseph, As you see, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will take you back to the land of your ancestors. It is to you and not to your brothers that I am giving Shechem, that fertile region which I took from the Amorites with my sword and my bow.